Have you ever had the scenario where you're trying to haul something in your truck and you just can't keep it in the position of your bed that you want it? You got cargo sliding all over the place. I certainly have had that problem. I tried to load my boxes up here in the back to take to UPS, and with the tonneau being over the top, I got to be able to get to it from the back. But by the time I get to town, everything's all the way up front, and I have to open the tonneau and I have to crawl all the way up there to get it. Maybe you have a situation where you have a tonneau. Maybe you just want your stuff sitting on the back. Maybe you got 5-gallon buckets and they're tipping over and spilling cargo all over your bed. Well, I didn't own this 25 Cummins for more than 24 hours before I already had the idea that I need to take advantage of this factory puck system, something that will plug in so I can put a divider in the bed. Now maybe you've seen the jack pole style, where it's just a pole that goes across and you got a handle that jacks it tight. The problem with that is you have to worry about bending your bed. If you get to the middle of your wheel wells, sometimes those are arched and that jack doesn't want to sit in there and it slides and it wants to fall off. And it's also just a skinny little pole. I thought, you know what? If I could make a system that uses a 2x, I could have my choice of what size board I want. And so I went to the drawing board immediately. I was shocked I couldn't find a system already out there that exists like this system. Dodge, Ram, Ford, GM, Chevy, even the Nissan Titan HD, they all have these factory pucks. Now, of course, they can't make it simple. They had to make it so everyone's is just a little bit different. And I'll note that at the time of recording this, I have not had the chance to try the Nissan. Once I get to that point, I will update the description and the website. Starting off, the Ford and GM trucks are similar in that the puck slots run lengthwise. Ram has to be different, and they run side to side. Ford and GM are almost the same size. The GM is just a couple millimeters shorter. Of course, it's got to be just a little bit different. And then coming over to the Ram, the front slots are just a couple millimeters bigger than the Ford, but then you get to the back and the rears are way bigger than the fronts. So it took me a while, but I have 2 part numbers. I have 1 part number for the Dodge Ram, and I have another part number for Ford, Chevy, GMC. So this system plugs into your factory 5th wheel pucks. These would also be the same pucks where you would plug in your safety chain mounts. So the perk on the Dodge Ram is that the 2 pucks are spaced quite a ways away from each other. On the Ford, they're quite a bit closer. But this gives us 2 bed divider positions. Now this is going to be a product in continuous development, so I can make it better, more efficiently, cheaper. This is already the 2nd iteration. So this allows you to use any 2x. You can use a 2x4, a 2x16, whatever you want. But this allows me to very easily and quickly set a partition up in my bed so that when I open my tailgate, my cargo is still right there at the end of the bed where I put it and where I want it to stay. So I'm going to walk you through installation on my 2025 Cummins, but I'll also show you how these fit in a Ford and a Chevy later on in the video. So the first step is you need to decide what size of board you want. And I tried a 2x4, then I went up to a 2x6, and I think the 2x6 is perfect for me. I also tried a 2x8 and a 2x10, but with the tonneau cover, if I ever did want to crawl in and reach over or crawl over between the board and the tonneau cover, anything taller than a 2x6 would have made that very difficult. And all we're trying to do, in my case, is keep objects from sliding. So really they just have to hit a board on the bottom. So I found my 2x6. The next things you'll need is going to be your tape measure, a Sharpie, and your Doomsday Diesel pucks. The next step is we're going to find our pucks. We're going to measure from side to side, and we're going to take the narrower dimension so that our board will fit both positions. So take your tape measure, stick it to one side, get that dimension, then you're going to transfer that over to your board. And I'm going to go about 1.5 inches shorter or narrower than the bed dimension so that I don't have to worry about that board ever coming into contact with the bed. So with our board cut, we're next going to mock up our pucks. So now you can see what I was talking about with the Dodge Ram slots being different front to back. The back is much larger. So we want to mock up our pucks, make sure that they do fit. Now, these are an incredibly precision thing, really. Even though they're cut and welded, they are still a fairly precision part. If I make them just a little bit off, they won't fit. Now the back is going to be sloppier since it's a bigger hole, but you still want to install them and make sure they line up so that you can slide a board inside. Shouldn't have any problem with the back side. We're going to move to the front where we have the smaller slots, and you can see this one actually locks into place. It bottoms out. We can't rotate that anymore. Same thing with this guy. It stops right there. I can't rotate that any further. So it's important that we test fit these because they may only install one direction. You want to make sure that before we drill our hole through our board, we have these go in the direction that they're going to fit. And if you want to, you could even label them right and left. Also keep in mind, they'll be able to slide side to side just a little bit. So when we go to drill our hole through, it's going to lock in the position of these pucks. They're always going to be locked in where they're at. So once you're happy with it, you're going to center your board so that it's the same gap on each side from the side of the bed. Then we're going to take our Sharpie and we're going to mark our holes. Now for marking and drilling your holes, you have two options. You can do it the crude way and just put your board in here and bring your hand drill over here and drill through. You run a couple risks with this. First, you're probably going to damage the zinc plating on your puck, which is going to lead to corrosion sooner than later. Perhaps that may not be an issue for you though. The other risk you have is not drilling your hole straight through to the other side. The safest way to do this is to take your board out and go to a drill press so that the hole goes straight through the board, and so that hole will line up with the other side of the clevis. Another option you have is to take your hand drill and just kiss the top of the board with the drill bit so that you know exactly where to drill once you get to the drill press. And to be safe, I actually encourage you to drill one hole, come back over here, we'll install our pin, which will lock this in place, and then we will verify the position of our second hole before we drill it, just to make fully sure we get the hole right in the exact position where we want it. I'm also just going to put an R for right and an L for left on the board, just to make this as quick and as easy as possible when I put my board in and I move it from the front to the back. Now, if you're wondering why I have a sheet of OSB in here, it's because I move a lot of pallets, and I bought a long bed so that I could move 2 pallets at once. And usually the forklift operator will set a pallet in the bed, they'll move the forks to the back of the pallet, they'll lift it up a little bit, and they'll skid it in. They'll shove it in and slide it over the bed. Now, I didn't want to run the risk of damaging my bed liner because I've seen plenty of bed liners peeled off and torn off, and that's not covered under warranty if you're sliding parts across it. I wanted to make it easier to slide while still having the ability to lock my cargo into position. So this OSB protects the bed. It makes it slick enough that we can slide a pallet across easily. I took a jigsaw, cut out the holes for the pucks, and I can also use the puck bed divider system to keep my pallet from shifting if that was ever going to be an issue. So long story short, I wanted to accommodate for any thickness that you might have on top of the sheet metal of your bed. Whether it's a bed liner, maybe you have a thick rubber bed mat or bed rug, or maybe you're like me and you have a sheet of OSB. I accommodated for that by placing this hole high enough up from the bottom that you'll always be able to pierce through the board, even if the board doesn't sit all the way flush on the bottom against this, because really your 2x could be spaced up. If this is so thick the board can't touch this, it doesn't matter as long as you can drill a hole through the board to catch the board. As you can see here, my board rests pretty much flat right on top of the sheet of OSB. But yet I spaced the hole far enough down that this will still work for a 2x4, even if you have to lift the 2x4 a little bit up off the puck. All right, so we got our first hole drilled in the drill press, and the hole in this puck is 10.5 millimeters. So that's where I would recommend starting, is somewhere around 10.5 millimeters, which is a little over 0.4 inches in diameter. And if you get your hole spot on, that'll let your board sit as tight as possible. But of course, if you miss, you can always start stepping your hole size up in your board closer to 7/16. So we're going to set our board back in our pucks, make sure our hole's lined up there. And these are called scaffold pins. And so I was going to use more of a linch pin, but this is the easiest thing I could think of, because you don't have to physically move a clip over to the other side. We don't have to worry about routing the linch pin underneath there. We can simply just straighten this out, guide it through, and when it comes through, this piece dangles down, and now it's mechanically locked into position. Now these are super cheap, you know, it's not a precision part. So this can vary, this thickness with this rivet head, and depending on how much they ground off the backside right here, determines how straight this can be. And so I've seen some of these where this dimension is longer, and so it only lets them go about that far. So if your pin doesn't fit, all you have to do is take a flap disc or take your belt sander and just barely grind this down, and that lets this go closer to straight, and then it'll let it go through. So with that side locked in, we'll come back over to this side and we'll verify our hole is still where we want it, and it is. So now we'll take this back out and go to the drill press for our second hole. And now that we have our second hole drilled on the drill press, we'll mock this up and make sure she fits. And I do really recommend using the drill press because you get a perfectly straight hole, and it should make this very simple and straightforward. So you just line your hole up with your Clevis or your puck, slide that through. That is locked in. Come over here, hole's already lined up, straighten that out, shove that through, and she's locked in. And so that's it, it's locked in. It can't physically come up because the puck is rotated in there. This can't slide side to side because the pins keep the board in place. So you don't have to worry about the board coming up or sliding over. To remove, it's very simple. You just take this piece, pull it out straight, pull it out. So now we will move this to our rear position just to make sure it fits the rear as well. And there you have it. That's how quick and easy it is to move from the front position to the rear position. And that's how quick and easy it is to set this up for your truck. All right, so installation in the Ford, super simple. Now these are going to be a little bit different size, and they're going to be clocked a little differently since these, like I was saying, run front to back instead of side to side. But it's just not even a quarter turn, and now that's locked in. And these are the same size slots on the front and the back of the Ford. So again, on the Chevys, they are the same direction as the Ford, but they are just about 2 millimeters smaller. And so on this prototype batch, this kit's not going to work on the Chevys, but we'll get the update made on the next batch. So thank you for watching, guys. If you think this is a good idea, please share this video, share it with your friends. You never know who might benefit from this bed divider system. I sell these as pairs. They are made out of steel. and they are black zinc plated. So the black zinc, I think, really blends in nicely with the factory black bed liner, and this is supposed to be even more corrosion resistant than my standard clear zinc that most of my parts are coated. I also made a point to get zinc plated pins. For those of you who don't have a tonneau cover and this will sit out in the elements 24/7, it'll give you the longest life before this starts to rust. Of course, naturally, this is going to rust eventually because it is steel. If you do have your truck out in the weather, I would probably recommend getting a treated board instead of a home construction interior board. And lastly, I just want to point out the only purpose of this is just a bed partition divider system. It's not meant to be plugged into your puck and clamped to. It is not a load-bearing device. It's not meant for safety chains or tie-down straps. It is simply meant to keep stuff from sliding around in your bed. So thanks again for watching, guys. And again, please share this video. I'd love to get the word out. I think this is going to be my next big idea. Everyone I've showed it to already loves it and has requested a pair for themselves. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.